To that point, I like to ask, what are some of the biggest mistakes, the most common mistakes you see amongst the students who you coach for the MCAT?
Yeah, great question. And something I should note there is, like I said earlier, cars, if a student has one section that's lower than the others, it's nearly always cars, the reading comprehension section. And the reason that is the case because cars doesn't rely on any science content. So let's say I have a test strategy weakness, but I know the content really well. Usually my content knowledge will protect me from strategy weaknesses. It'll almost buffer against some of my strategy weaknesses. But with cars, because we have no content to rely on, it exposes our weaknesses in strategy. So students sometimes say, well, I'm struggling with cars, but everything else is fine. I'm like, wait, but cars gives us a very important hint as to why you're struggling, not just there, but why maybe some of your other scores aren't perfect yet. So, in terms of the most common issues that I see, is when I'm observing students go through cars, a very common issue that we observe is students will assume or impute some form of information from the passage. So the passage will say make a statement, and then the student will either impute something or infer something that wasn't actually said in the passage. So a good example of this is, let's say I said to you, Chuki, it's been a while since I've eaten. Your thought as a human being is to say, oh, he must be hungry. Or let's go eat something then, right? That's kind of a natural response. But notice how I never said I was hungry.
This video is sponsored by the Funding Masterclass for International Students by Sojourning Scholars. Are you struggling to figure out how to fund your U.S. education? You've searched high and low for scholarships and other free funding opportunities, but nothing seems to work. As a former international student, I know the challenges you're facing, having faced them myself. But I found a way to secure over $300,000 US in free funding to cover my undergraduate and graduate degrees without taking out a penny in student loan. That's why I created the Funding Masterclass for international students. It's a step-by-step roadmap designed to help you unlock scholarships, grants, fellowships, assistantships, and more. Plus, you will get access to our curated funding library with lots of funding opportunities you've never heard about, a private community for support, and much more. If you're ready to secure your future without the financial burden, head to sojourningscholar.com/FMC to enroll today. And now let's get back from students who have taken this to the video.
All I said was, but it's been quite a long time since I ate last, right? So that's an example of where sometimes students will read something in a passage where there's a statement made, and then we'll infer something from that or fill in a blank space that the passage never told us to do. And
I
then we'll
see.
make, and then it'll say, like, what was the writer of this passage saying? And then they'll pick an answer choice that said something like they were hungry, except I never said that. So
Right.
just to draw an example, and this can apply not only in cars, but in other sections as well, especially in passage-based questions. So I always encourage students to be mindful of, well, did the passage actually say that? Or is that something you are inferring from it? Because there are
I
some
see.
questions that are inference-based, but some questions that are pretty much like, well, what did it actually say? You know,
Mhm.
and you have to be able to, in some ways, kind of, restrain yourself from reading things that aren't there, right? And this assumes that you have content knowledge. If there's a question about test
Mhm.
content and you just don't know the content, you're kind of in a tough spot. But a lot of times that's not the issue. I work with a lot of students who have strong GPAs and clearly they've done well in the sciences, but they have this very hard time stopping themselves from reading too much into the question. And that's
I
something I
see.
always encourage students to pay attention to.